Hey, welcome to another week. So glad that you're here. Today we're doing something a little different, as you can tell. I invited my lovely bride, Monica, to join us today. I think that talking about spiritual disciplines is something that she's really helped me grow in throughout our marriage and our life, and so I thought she'd be a great one to bring in and chat with you about it. I know part of our goal in being here is we all want to grow in our faith. We all want to grow in our godliness and in our relationship with Jesus. And sometimes we wonder how we can go about that. Well, I think spiritual disciplines are a really good pattern that we see in the Bible that can help us intentionally grow our relationship with Jesus. Now, I want to remind you that we're not looking at the end goal of these just being that we do our disciplines like religious law. Our goal is to grow our godliness and our relationship with Jesus. 1 Timothy 4, 7-8 says, "Train yourself to be godly." Physical training is good, but training for godliness is much better, promising benefits in this life and in the life to come. And that's what we're here for. We want to train ourselves in our godliness so that we can have benefits in this life and life forever. So, with my wife here, I want to talk about the 12 different spiritual disciplines that I've written down for you guys. I broke them up into two categories. Half of them are going to be in self-denial, things that we try to maybe remove from our life, and half of them are going to be in engagement, where we try to add something into our life. You'll have a worksheet in front of you that you can follow along with and do some work on your own, but I just kind of wanted to open it up to you, Mo, and ask you, what are a couple of the spiritual disciplines that you've used in your life that have really helped you grow in your godliness and your relationship with God?
I think a couple of disciplines that I used early on, like first things I added to my life were Bible reading and prayer. That was not a regular part of my life, and I quickly found that I had a hunger for it and a need for it, that was a way that the Lord was wanting to connect with me. So I incorporated it into my daily life really quickly. There are some other ones like fasting that I have more when I was younger, before I had kids, because I had my doctor tell me I shouldn't or can't do that. But fasting from food really proved to be very powerful for me, especially when I was trying to go through something that was a big decision or praying for a specific thing or an area in my life. I found that was something the Lord really used powerfully to speak to me and to get through to me. So,
yeah, that's a powerful concept even in the Bible. Fasting and prayer together, where we remove something from our life in order to focus us on God. And fasting can be done, right, not just with food, but screens and media, technology, things like that really create that space and intentionality in our lives to pray and connect with God throughout the day. I remember fasting, and at first I was fasting and I'd get hungry and I'd focus on my hunger, and it would bug me that I was hungry, and I'd kind of just get angry because I was fasting. And then I remember really getting convicted by God that every time I felt those hunger pains, to turn that into prayer and a reminder to connect with Jesus throughout my day. And I was hungry a lot throughout my day, so I connected with Jesus a lot throughout my day. So really, that's the goal, right, of all these spiritual disciplines is connecting with Jesus, not just doing a discipline. And that was probably one of the biggest problems the Pharisees had, right, was they were doing religious things very, very well, but that's where they ended. They didn't let it go past that to connecting them with God. So I'd be curious to hear from you. How do you think we can engage in spiritual disciplines, but not have them turn into religious law that we follow? Instead, really use them to connect us with Jesus?
I think it probably looks different for different ones, but I think the most important part of ensuring that is to make sure that we remember what the main thing is, and the main thing is to connect with the Lord. And I do think it's really critical that we're flexible with how it looks. So, for example, when I was very young, I started to try to read my Bible every day, and at first it felt like a big chore. It was not fun. I did not want to do it. It's kind of like training for a marathon, where you do your training for the marathon. You need to do your training that day, but you don't want to do that, but you do want to run the marathon. So because you want to run the marathon, you stick to your training. And it's kind of the same idea, is that I want to get closer to the Lord. And because I want to get closer to the Lord, I'm going to stick to my training of reading my Bible and praying. And at first, it feels like a chore. And I found that the more I did it, the more it became something that I wanted and felt like I couldn't even live without. And it's in that felt like I couldn't live without where it kind of almost flipped to I need this. Not just I need the Lord in my life, but I need my Bible reading in my life, and I need my prayer in my life. And if I don't get them, then things are not okay. And for me, it really came to a head when I had kids, and my young kids would interrupt my Bible reading, and they'd interrupt my prayer. And I found that I couldn't get that solid time anymore. And I found myself erupting sometimes, like, I'm trying to read the Bible here. Like, why are you cute? So the fruit of the Spirit was definitely not there. And, I really had to take a step back and realize what was the goal of the Bible reading, what was the goal of the prayer, is to be close to the Lord. And well, am I exuding the character or spirit of someone who's close to the Lord right now? No, I'm not. And so I feel like that's, you can see that if something interferes with your ability to carry out a discipline that maybe is God ordained, if your reaction to it is frustration or even a fear of failure, like you have pride that you do it every day and then all of a sudden you're failing and doing it, that may be an indicator that the discipline has overtaken its place in what it's supposed to do.
Yeah. And I think you see that in the Pharisees, right? Like Jesus railed on these guys because they were praying, but they were praying for other people to hear how great they prayed. They weren't praying to actually connect with God, or they were tithing so precisely out of their spices in their cabinets, right? But it was all to show how religious and how great they were at being religious people instead of actually trying to love God and honor God with it. And so that pride, humility interchange is, I think, so important in this. When our spiritual disciplines cause us to start looking at other people and comparing ourselves to them and say, oh, wow, I read my Bible so much more than Mo does, so therefore I'm a better Christian than she is. That's not the purpose. That's not what God wants for you. God wants to grow his relationship with you. And these things can help us do that as we engage with them, as long as they're not our end goal. Our end goal is connection with Jesus. And I love how you said, with that being the end goal, that yes, I had this time where I was reading my Bible, but if for some reason that can't happen anymore because of kids or something like that our end goal is here. So how can I mold this then to then get to my end goal? Maybe it looks like listening to the Bible in the car, or worshiping when you're doing dishes or in the shower. It might have to morph. As long as it's pointing us to Jesus, that's our whole goal. Mm-hmm.
I feel like too, if you feel the need to keep a discipline a certain way at all costs, then it's probably past its time and usefulness of growing you close to the Lord, because then it becomes this rigid routine you can't live without. Like, what if you were in prison? How would you do that discipline? You have to, there's ways to grow close to the Lord in prison. So clearly there has to be some fluidity to how that discipline gets carried out. As well as if you feel the need to brag about your disciplines to other people, that's a really big warning sign that maybe something's gone wrong. Yeah.
Well, I think those are a couple good indicators to look for. As we kind of wrap up this conversation, and there's a lot more we could talk about, we could go forever on this stuff, but wanted to give you the opportunity, just kind of an open floor on spiritual disciplines, concerns you would have for people, or encouragement you would have for people, or just other thoughts that we haven't gotten to share yet.
I don't know. I think my biggest encouragement would be that this is something for you and the Lord to figure out together. God wants to grow closer to you. That's a given. If you seek him, you'll find him. So the question is just, in what discipline might he want to meet you? Like asking him, which one should I do, Lord? What might be an area where you want to grow me the most, and give him the open door to challenge you in a certain one. And it might look different for you than it does for someone else. Some of these disciplines might come very easily and naturally to you, and they might be very challenging and hard for other people. And so I think it's important to make sure that it's a you and him decision, and that you're not comparing yourself to what someone else might find fruitful or useful, because the Lord uses all of them in different ways, I think, in different people.
It's a good closing note. I would just encourage you, just like Paul says in 1 Timothy 4, we can train ourselves in godliness. And it sucks going to the gym, but the results are way worth it. And so much more for our godliness. Results in this life and in the life to come. So I hope that you take up this challenge and start to pray and talk to God and see which disciplines He wants you to start working on in your life. Thank you so much for being here, and we'll see you next week. God bless you guys.